Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for Friday, January 20th, 2023, going up on a Saturday. I am back to this old routine. Hopefully I'll be back to real Friday next week. We'll see, but whatever. This has been a bit of a week. Little stressful in some ways, and just sort of long and busy in other ways. Over the last week, I had a couple of events after work, like rehearsal for this flash choir my synagogue has. We have this performance coming up in early February. And my beta reading matchup group, we met to discuss some of our latest chapters we're reading in each other's novels. So that stuff's been great. But then there's, work stress, and also this weird technological issue with my camera that came back in my last video, my Jewish Book Awards video, where the recording started and stopped with this buffering issue, and I don't know. I went ahead and I formatted my chip or memory card, or just hoping, knock on wood, everything's back to normal again, but hopefully we can work around it either way. But yeah. All that being said, I got some reading done along the way, although I feel like it wasn't my best reading week in terms of enjoyment, and I'm hoping it's not just I don't know, stress from the rest of the week percolating in, but I guess I'll let you be the judge. As always in these AM reading videos, I will start by reviewing the next short story in this short story collection of Dorothy Parker's work, which I have been reading from since May 2021. And I do one story per AM reading video, and this is the penultimate story. I will be finishing next week. It's quite exciting in that way, feeling quite accomplished. Anyway, this story, or technically sketch that she wrote in 1922, is called Our Own Crowd. It takes place, it revolves around a group of adult friends, couples, who vacation together in this summer home. It's called the Pebbly Point House, and these people are quite full of themselves and full of their own importance, and there's a satirical narration which is common for Parker in talking about characters like this. These three couples, they just think they're the cream of the crop. They're just so self-involved and self-important in their activities and their wardrobes, and they feel like everyone else is, as interested in them as they are, and they feel like in going to Point Pebbly House, they are rich people seeing how the other half lives and deigning them with their presence, and I don't know, their lives are just quite mundane, and they take it to the extreme about their own self-importance, and like there's a part where, they're forcing themselves into acting plays with children and critiquing the child actors and that sort of thing. And then when the summer comes to an end, they all promise themselves that, when they're back in the city, they'll get together very regularly, several times a week. And as it turns out, they get back to their normal lives, and life marches on, and they barely have occasion to see each other. And then when they force themselves to have like 3 get-togethers over, the course of the rest of the year, they're not as enamored with each other, and like everything they loved about their little quirks and eccentricities seems annoying in retrospect, and they can like barely stomach being together. But then they get back the next year to the house, and they fall back into their love affair with one another and are gushing by the end, oh, we'll see each other all the time over the winter. So, yeah, it's the usual sort of silly, self-involved people who don't seem to have a great grasp, sense of who they really are, but Parker has a lot of fun sort of pillorying them. The first book I finished this week, I talked about last week too, is Memories Legion. This is actually a short story / novella collection for The Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. The Expanse series was a science fiction book series, was adapted to a television show, takes place in the 24th century, imagines a human race. We've colonized Mars and the asteroid belt and have various socioeconomic and political realities come out of that, and certainly technological realities. It's a very, especially in the beginning, scientifically accurate portrayal, or like it just stays very close to hard science when it, talks about future tech. But then, starting in the first novel, they do uncover this alien technology, this first contact, as it were, with alien technology, and their doings with this technology, and, the latent desires or, purpose of this technology shapes human history throughout the next 30, 40, I guess half century really, that spans the Expanse novels, and we primarily follow it through this this crew of people, diverse people who live on a ship together. And of course, along the way, they meet people, and there's a lot of, just socioeconomic realities that come into play. So these short stories, and well, mostly novellas, are going into those issues from their past to going through the whole series, because I think near the end these novellas came out sort of in between novels, so they roughly took place around the same time as the novels being released. So the last novella in here is The Sins of Our Fathers, and it actually takes place after the final actions, pre-epilogue final actions of Leviathan Falls, which was the final book of the official series. So it's sprawling and far-reaching. And for those of us who love The Expanse, we get to see characters come back again who, appeared and often then disappeared or what have you in the original series, and we get to see what happened with them and explore new socioeconomic and political issues. So I enjoyed this. I figured I would. A lot of the novellas and short stories were already adapted in a way in the Expanse TV show, so those ones tended to be my favorites, and a lot of times. I think beyond all of the usual science fiction canards, from technology to imagining, the future in systematic terms, there is a human heart to this as well. It's not necessarily high literary fiction, but I do think the characters often stand and have interesting, things going on, and that they're not just, machinations of the plot. So I'm sad that, now I've finished everything in The Expanse. I have nothing new to consume, but I feel like it was finally time to, cross this final border. And it was a nice farewell, a little less grandiose even than the farewell at the end of Leviathan Falls, so maybe nice again in that way as well. So, yeah, this definitely was a strong start, a positive part of the reading this week. The next book I finished and also talked about last week is Cloud Cuckoo Land, which I consumed over audio. Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr is also speculative fiction, even science fiction, even spacefaring future fiction taking place, that storyline takes place in the 22nd century. But in fact, this is a tiered timeline, multi-timeline story that starts in the past. The first storyline follows characters on either side of the conflict when the Sultan Mehmed of the Ottoman Empire, conquers Constantinople. It's like a major turning point in history, the death of one empire and the rise of a new one in a way. The second story takes place in 2020. It's about a lot smaller. It's about a young teenager who has been disenchanted with the modern world due to the encroachment of development in, the natural habitat where he found a lot of personal, satisfaction. And of course he then did, research into the realities of climate change and that sort of thing. So he has become an eco-terrorist, joined a terrorist group. He goes to a local library, which is attached to a real estate building, so he goes there as a way to blow up the building, like he has a bomb in a backpack, and goes into the library to place it. But of course things go awry. He is caught, and upstairs there is our second POV character, a senior citizen named Zeno, who is a Greek translator, and he is practicing a play with a bunch of kids. So there's, you know, that standoff there. And then finally, in the 22nd century, we are following a young girl named Constance who is on a generation ship, and things are not what they seem in her storyline as well. And the thread that holds all of these three stories together is this translation of of a fake story written by a real Greek philosopher called Cloud Cuckoo Land by Antonius Diogenes. And Cloud Cuckoo Land is about, you know, a simple peasant farmer who learns about this fantastical paradise called Cloud Cuckoo Land and decides he wants to go there, and supernatural forces turn him into animals along the way. And it's mostly comic just in that way. You know, there's interstitial chapters, and to me it seems like the thing that would really bring people into this story is just sort of the ridiculous satirical interactions he has as an animal. But the broader, I guess, theme is talking about, like, who are you? Or do you want to, you know, strive for this paradise? Or do you want to, you know, be a simple person who lives a simple earthly life? And in a lot of ways, that's what the characters, I think, in these storylines are doing. Like, do you want to strive for perfection? Like, do you want to give yourself to this Constantinople cause? Do you want to give yourself for, you know, saving the world through terrorism? Do you want to give yourself to, you know, shooting for the stars for a new perfect home? Or do you want to live a more simple life? Although I'm worried now, I'm already skirting some spoilers in a way, especially with the future story, which I'll just say I do think it was my least favorite. I feel like, you know, Doerr is incredible with research and with details, including in the future story with all the science stuff, but I feel like the character and her environs and what she was facing was much more simplistic in a way than the others. I guess I never bought it. I never bought that there was a full society behind her. It's weird to think, too, of the Constantinople story where we're following two just minor characters along, you know, nobodies, but I did feel like there was a sprawling, you know, society with, you know, these big ancient religions behind them and that sort of thing. But I just, and maybe that was just easy because I'm, you know, lazy and like I know enough about Constantinople to know there were, you know, big, you know, societies and, you know, the end of the Roman Empire and the rise of the Ottomans and that sort of thing. But I could buy that there was a real world there the way I didn't so much in the future. And then my biggest problem with the present is that it just, you know, these storylines are so protracted because you go back and forth between them. And so we're following these, you know, sprawling timelines, like about traveling through space or traveling even to Constantinople in medieval times with a bunch of medieval warfare or prepping for, you know, this attack. It takes a while, and that makes sense. But, you know, going back over and over again to February 20th, 2020, you know, to the standoff in the library, it's a bit tedious in a way after a while. Although what Doerr does there is he builds up the backstories of those two characters, which is a lot more interesting, but just the pacing was a little weird. If I'm nitpicking, I mean, I overall really did enjoy this one as well. I just feel like there's a little nits to pick. I also do feel like, you know, this is a big love letter to reading. It's like it shows the tragedy of stories that are lost to time. Like a lot of this fake story is lost to lack of preservation, and there's little that can be fully remembered or recalled or translated. But then there's also just that beauty that this one particular story and others like it could transcend time, and like people are interacting with the story up until the future, you know, and it also is a big homage to librarians and what they do to bring reading and imagination and intellect and research to people. But I do feel like Doerr kind of goes overboard sometimes. There's a bit of a saving power that feels a bit, I don't know, supernatural. There's occasionally some of the characters sound more like philosophical ideas. I don't know. I just, that's a little nitpicky. For the most part, the characters worked. At least in the first two storylines. I don't know. So there is that third storyline that But I did overall, I get the hype. I could understand that there's something pretty special in what Doerr was doing. This next book is slightly similar to the last one, which the 2020 storyline takes place in Idaho, and this book is called IDAHO by Emily Ruskovitch. This is one of my top of the Goodreads books. It's been on my Goodreads TBR for a while. It's at the top now, or was at the top. And I'm sure I added it. I probably heard about it through all the books, through Liberty Hardy probably, Book Riot, I assume, because it's just literary fiction. That's how I usually hear about literary fiction. And I remember what drew me into this story. It is the family drama story, which I'm like. It's about this woman, the second wife named Anne, who marries a man who's about, I guess, 15 years older than her, named Wade, who has this tragic history behind him where his first wife murdered one of his daughters and the other one disappeared into the woods, and they never found her. And Anne wants to basically recount the story and figure out what happened and why. And the first wife is in prison, and there's other characters in town who we somewhat follow. And the reason it doesn't come together for me is it's so plotless. And I am not team plot. I don't need a lot of plot. But everything is so opaque, and all of the drama, I think, is so overwrought that it just isn't working for me at all. I just can't connect to these characters. She's so uninterested in like having easy answers for why anything happened that there's no answers really for why anything happened. I don't think anything that truly makes sense. Like, I go back and forth. I have respect for the ideas that, you know, life is complicated. People aren't, you know, one-dimensional in their thinking, their beliefs, their actions. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be anything. That, you know, there's just all of this MFA style writing that some people think is quite good, and occasionally I can, you know, get invested in too, but everything is so disconnected, and there's just no real effort, I feel like, being put into the characters as much as into the language and into just thematic stuff. I'm just not connecting to this story. I have about, I guess, 80 or so pages left or something, and I just don't care about these characters. I feel like she has to put more work into, for me to be invested, she has to put more work into developing characters to feel like real people, because to me, real people are complicated, yes, but they don't just exist in flowery language. And you can't just go back and forth without some sort of plot progression or arc or better explored themes than people live in Idaho and you can't discover all mysteries or something like that. I don't buy a lot of this. I just feel like they're just sitting there musing. I feel like Anne is a character who has no depth beyond her. Like, everything about her is being obsessed about her husband and his family, and she has the barest scrim of backstory about being a person beyond that. I feel like Jenny and her roommate in prison don't feel like real people to me either. And the types of things that they're obsessed over in prison doesn't, and their prison life only feels slightly realistic to me. I'm just not buying it, but I'm slogging through. I'll probably give it a higher star rating than it deserves, at least due to compared to all of my complaints. But I just tend to grade highly, and I'm sure there is some quality MFA writing in here somewhere, and I respect the idea that things aren't simple, but this is not coming together ultimately. I am also in the middle of the Best American Short Stories of 2022, edited by the series editor Heidi Pitlor, and this year's special editor is Andrew Sean Greer. And this is also an annual tradition I do. I download the ebook for the latest Best American Short Stories collection at the beginning of the year and read it as a short story writer and enjoyer, just to see the cream of the crop of what's going on in letters. The idea of BASS is that there are several U.S. and Canadian literary journals out there with some prestige behind them. There's lots more beyond that that are submitted to BASS to be considered, and I think Pitler picks out 100 stories from that, and then the guest editor he whittles it down to the 20 that are then published in the latest installment. And I've only read 5 so far, and this probably could be my least favorite so far. I'm just not connecting with most of these stories, and I'm hoping it's not because of this other stuff going on. And I don't think I necessarily hate them. I just don't. I don't know. They're not grabbing me. Without a doubt, of these first 5 stories, my favorite so far is Man of the House by Kim Coleman Foote, which is about an elderly black man in the 1970s who lives in New Jersey, but his family did the Great Migration from south. And he decides to go down south to his ancestral homeland to try to track down an uncle who abandoned the family after his parents died, and then this main character, Jeb, had to become the man of the family, and he himself has a lot of regret in his past, like he's estranged from his children, estranged from his first wife, having issues with his sister, so he's trying to, I think, get some closure and some answers with this uncle, and I just felt like here the characters were the most intriguing, the setting and the history was most intriguing to me. The others aren't living up to that for me as much so far, but I do still have 15 stories left to go. I'm hoping maybe over the weekend I can try to pick up the pace a little bit, get through a little more of this collection, because I've been reading 1 per morning this week, which has been fun, but I'd also like to finish this before the end of the month. And hopefully when I report back, I will feel more optimistic about this collection. And finally, the latest audiobook I'm in the middle of is called The Actual Star by Monica Byrne, which I'm listening to on my library's Hoopla account. So this is a speculative, time-tiered story which I am reading to be in conversation with Cloud Cuckoo Land. Both of these novels were published in 2021. But Anthony's Doerr's got a lot more attention. He's a lot more well-known, and he's well-known in the literary world, which I think is mostly where people think of Cloud Cuckoo Land from, whereas Monica Byrne is much less well-known, and it's mostly the science fiction, speculative genre world that paid attention to her book. Insofar as it paid attention, I think it wasn't necessarily one of the big books, but I definitely got some attention, and mostly positive attention from reviewers. So this multi-timeline story, which I'm just only at the beginning of right now, there are 3 timelines. They each take place 1,000 years apart. One is in 10,012 at the end of the Mayan, not civilization, because as this book points out, there remain Mayan people to this day, but certainly the end of the tail end of their empire, when there's this last sort of kingdom, as it were, that is still standing, and we are following these 2 twins who are about to ascend to the throne after the death of their parents, and they also have a prophetic younger sister. And then in the next storyline, it is 2012, and this young woman named Leah, 19 years old, she comes from a intercultural background, and her father is a Mayan man from Belize, and she wants to go there. She's just looking for answers and purpose in her own life. And then finally, in 1,000 years in the future, it is 3012. A very different society has emerged. All of the ice caps have melted. In fact, human civilization has dwindled down to a few million people who survived climate change. But for those who remain, it's a bit of a utopia. There hasn't been war for hundreds of years. There's high technology that somehow supports their nomadic lifestyle. There is a new religion that came out of Mayan culture, and Leah, or Saint Leia, is a major figure in that. There's a lot of other big world building things in here as well. The big one is we're following this character who is challenging the only religion and its precepts about the afterlife, which is an actual place with an actual Mayan name, which appears in all three stories. And she's challenging the idea that it's a real place, but that is heresy in her culture, so she's facing a tribunal for that. And I think we're also going to start following this religiously fanatic character as well. And we're testing the idea, I think, if utopia can actually be a utopia, which is, I think, a big thing to do in a lot of science fiction. There's a lot in this story that is kind of similar to Brave New World, but definitely more detailed and definitely a different focus. This is a very anti-Western focus, as it were, and Byrne doesn't have, I don't think, has Mayan ancestry, or in either case she had to do a lot of research into Mayan history and beliefs to write this. And I think a lot of people are taken with the future storyline. Just unlike Doerr's, I do feel like she at least put a lot of effort into creating the world building, although I still chafe at the idea that we could only have one religion, although I do think it seems like part of what she is saying is, no, we can't, you know, change is inevitable to human survival, so the fact that there is only one religion means ultimately things will have to be challenged, or the precepts, the orthodoxies of that religion will be challenged. I feel like that's somewhat true in the other two stories as well, where these royals in the final Mayan Empire days who consider themselves above humans and belong to a culture where human sacrifice, after all, is demanded, they're about to be challenged. And in the modern day, I feel like the big challenge is through Leah, who is, I feel like, a much less, well, in her storyline, is a much less important character than the others. But she comes from this background where she is a child born out of wedlock, and her mother is a very religious Catholic, so she is sort of you know, this anathema to the orthodoxies of Catholic belief about, you know, other religions and about wedlock and that sort of thing. And she's trying to, you know, exist beyond the strictures of Catholicism. I don't know, now I'm thinking a lot about His Dark Materials in a way, which also sort of challenged the strict orthodoxies of, well, particularly Catholic and Christian-inspired religions. Anyway, I'm intrigued. I'm a little wary, I guess, and I have to sit with this, or maybe I've been starting to read bad reviews, maybe to see if other people struggled with what I struggled with, which I probably shouldn't do, especially this early. I feel like maybe things are a little too philosophical with this. Maybe the characters aren't coming as alive for me for the most part, because there's just so much philosophical stuff that Byrne is trying to get into, and there's just a lot of well, the political stuff comes from a very leftist or far left perspective, and when things are so, you know, monochromatic in that way, I start to chafe. And again, I feel like part of the story is about, you know, you have to be able to change and adapt, and, you know, there can't just be one way. So in a way, I feel like I'm supposed to be challenged, and I'm not, maybe not even supposed to agree with everything on the page. And it's not like I, you know, find everything like, you know, offensively wrong or something. Especially because I'm trying to say I think things are complicated. A lot of what she is writing about in terms of certainly science, and also more importantly into political and social realities and the problems of today's world and the problems of the past, certainly makes sense to me. But I guess my big thing is that I wonder if it's too philosophical, and that the characters don't necessarily feel real beyond it. She is a character who does not hold people by the hands with her world building. This was also the case in her first novel, The Girl in the Road, which was a near future story, which also takes place in non-Western settings. So certainly I'm aware as a Westerner who most stories like this are, say, about the Greeks, you know, and the Western society that sort of has been a bedrock of a lot of my education. That stuff is not the main purpose of this story, and I am grateful for that, to look at things from a different perspective, and there's different philosophies and spirituality in this one. But I'm a little wary that it's too much, you know, of these big themes and not enough about the character stuff. But at least the themes and what she's grappling with is a lot more enticing, I think, than it works better in this sort of epic science fiction than I think it would like the literary fiction IDAHO, which is just so insular to the point where it needs stronger characters, because the point is about probing the human condition in smaller ways. So if you can't make characters who work in that sort of story, I feel like it falls apart faster. But with the actual star, I feel like the characters who don't work for me are going to be a problem, but the themes and the world building could make up for it some. So I will be reporting back, because I also do want to finish this one by the end of the month, because I'm hoping to write a blog post where I review Cloud Cuckoo Land and the actual star, which I feel like I'm already like drawing connections, and it's fascinating to see the similarities and the differences in what they're trying to do. So anyway, yeah, now I feel like I'm ending on a good note. I'm excited about what the future in my literary reading and thought will bring. And that about covers it for me now. So yeah, I'm glad I'm feeling more optimistic now, even though I felt a little iffy about some of my reading this week, but I'm trying to see the positives in it too. And knock on wood, I haven't had any problems with the filming so far. It does seem like the battery is draining kind of fast, but you know, let's not worry too much about that so long as everything records. So anyway, now I'm going off into the weekend, and speaking of my beta reading group, I have to edit my next batch of chapters to send to them. And tomorrow or Sunday, there's also a Zoom event that my synagogue is putting on, with another synagogue in the area, where we are interviewing or listening to an interview with a short story writer, Omer Friedlander. And what do you know? I have his short story collection right here, which I'm hoping to read in February. So, huzzah. Anyway, I'll be back on this channel within the next week to do my latest Would You Read It challenge video, which is a tag that I co-opted from @2Brody. And in this case, I am taking it to take a look back at the BookTube Prize of Old and the old octafinal ballots and revisit those books, which has been quite fun. So stay tuned for that. I hope you all are doing well with your reading and the rest of your lives. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time.